Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me on this Monday. I hope this weekend was as good to you as it was to the U.S. men's hockey team, completing the sweep thanks to the women's team also beating Canada in the gold medal game. What a Sunday morning to wake up to. It definitely had me feeling like some Sunday scaries, but that might be the allergies that I'm dealing with. The temperatures going up, down, all over the place here in Dallas, where we are broadcasting to you live Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time here on All Access AM. We appreciate you guys being with us on this Monday. Lots to get to in the world of the ACC, and really want to drill down later in the show with our friend James Fletcher of On 3 and Bracketology at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. He'll join us. Well, I should say 8:30 a.m. Central Time. He will join us and break down all of the things that are going on in the world of bracketology following Duke's huge win over Michigan. We also got a lot more ACC action to get to, what it all means, and more. We also have Combine this week, the NFL Combine getting underway in Indy. Hopefully, everybody who is there will stay safe getting over there. And while they're in Indianapolis, I know there's some snow and there's all sorts of weather in the Northeast. I know Indianapolis isn't in the Northeast, but they got hit with it on the way there, or at least earlier this weekend as players were starting to come in and things like that. But Thursday marks the start of the NFL Combine. We'll get into some of those storylines to watch, and hopefully we'll get some folks on to talk about some of the top players in the ACC as far as what they did in the Combine. That'll run until Sunday. Of course, it's always at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Some major ACC names set to compete, and we'll set the table for you guys on this edition of the pod, just because there is so much at the top of the NFL draft that I feel like we could see some changes, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about how all of this is going for ACC players at the NFL Combine. So we will have James Fletcher on. He'll talk Duke, Michigan. That's a big one right off the bat in the college basketball world. We'll also discuss the action of the ACC and how it impacted bracketology. We're expecting Duke to be the new number one team in college basketball when the rankings come out on this Monday. And we just have a lot of musings, I would say, to get to some different takes out there, some things I want to react to on this Monday. So glad to have you with us. And we are glad to have our friends at Security National Bank being a key partner for us in the All Access AM world. And we appreciate all their support, what they do for everybody that works with them. And when you think about banks these days, you want to have that personal attention. Well, you still get that with Security National Bank and the family feel. And there's a reason why they've been voted the best by some of their peers in the business world and the banking world. We bank with them on the business side of things. So we're really proud to be partnered with them and share their excitement for college athletics and in particular the ACC. So make sure you go to securitynational.bank and research what they could do to help you, your family, your business, or give them a call, 402-344-7300. Their phone line should be opening up here very shortly for you guys to chat with them as you kick off your week and maybe look into how they can help you with your banking needs. So visit Security National Bank for more information. We're going to try to get through the show with as minimal of me hitting your earbuds or however you're listening to us with coughing or any of those things. But I tell you what, the allergies are getting going, but in a very controlled climate in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium, we will see some of the NFL best prospects get after it. And all eyes are really on Ruben Bain in particular, with his top 10 status going into the week. How does that look following at the end of the week? We will keep a close eye on that as Ruben Bain continues to be a top NFL draft name. He's currently projected to the Washington Commanders, according to CBS. They have the 7th overall pick in the draft. And I think for Ruben Bain, you're looking at somebody who, when you see what Dan Quinn can do with defensive lines and moving players around, I think Ruben Bain at the next level can do some of that. He could probably play either edge depending on the situation, maybe slide inside as a three tech from time to time. There's just a lot of fun that you can have with Ruben Bain because, has his production, number one edge player in college football, had some Heisman Trophy buzz at times this year, but has also been able to, certainly be a player that allows other players to make plays because of how big of a threat he is. 20 and a half sacks over the course of his college career, 9.5 this year. And teams really had to game plan for him and continue to prep for him every week. And one of the big storylines that we're watching as well is his partner in crime, Akeem Mesidor. He did have an injury sustained in the college football playoffs, and that is something that as you get to Indianapolis, they're going to look at. They're going to keep a close eye on and look into because did impact him a little bit there. He missed just a touch of time, but really played through it. So how does that look as far as the medical checks go? Will he be able to do some of the things that the NFL wants him to do? He injured his right arm shoulder in that game against Ole Miss and played in the college football playoff national championship against Indiana, of course. And he did get a Senior Bowl invite, but decided that he was going to wait really to compete and kind of get a little healthier to that Senior Bowl for those of the guys that played in the national championship game. Certainly was a quick turnaround right after that. So Miami's two impressive edge players. What do they look like at the NFL Combine? And of course, you've got Francis Maui Noah at the offensive tackle spot. You've got Markel Bell. You have Carson Beck in there as well. The quarterback battle between Carson Beck and Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik for really that three spot behind Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson. That's going to be an intriguing battle as those guys try to position themselves in a weak quarterback class to be that first guy off the board. And is that Carson Beck? Is that uh, Cade Klubnik? Is that Garrett Nussmeier? There are a bunch of different players that are really vying for that three spot. And of course, there are plenty of other quarterbacks who maybe it just takes one GM to fall in love with and they make their move up their draft boards. So those are a couple of names out of Miami, of course, that are making some noise. We'll be keeping a close eye on those guys. And On Three's Pete Nakos. If you don't have a subscription, go check us out on 3.com, rivals.com. Pete Nakos did post a really interesting article on some of the NFL Combine guys to watch. And, one that there's a lot of buzz around. And as an ACC pod, we know plenty about him. That's Clemson's Peter Woods. He's going to be one of the most intriguing players in this combine at 6'3", 310 pounds. Could play him out on, kind of a strong side defensive end at moments, but really an interior guy. He has incredible twitch that I think if he tests well, could really catapult him up NFL draft boards. And, when you look at this Clemson group, Peter Woods is kind of leading the way. 16th overall projected right now to the New York Jets. And that was something that was kind of right on point with where Clemson's group that was highly touted, that was highly thought of going into this year was going to slide in around. We thought somebody would be a top 10 pick, but, obviously this is just draft projections and mock drafts. But right now, no one projected in the top 10. You do have Avion Terrell out of Clemson as well, right behind Peter Woods, projected at 17 to the Detroit Lions. And Dan Campbell would love, a lockdown type of cornerback for that group and to put them in position to do so much more on the defensive side. That could be a lot of fun to watch. You also look at the rest of this, first round, and that's kind of it. And for the ACC, you have these players that are coming to Indy and they're looking to make a name for themselves and they're looking to make a statement. And that's where, Bain comes in. I think Bain can still make a statement in terms of his draft stock, with some of the testing and some of the different things that he can do on the field. That's somebody that really stands out to me as far as being able to help himself. We mentioned Peter Woods just because, that Clemson defensive line, as talented as it was this year, and some of the key pieces on that defense as a whole, they did not produce. So is that a Peter Woods thing when you flip on the tape? Is that a back end issue? Is that just poor situational preparation? All of those things are worthwhile questions, and the NFL will get a chance to grill Peter Woods and kind of hold his feet to the fire a little bit and say, hey, why with your traits, with your measurables, with all the talent that you have, why would we not see you be more productive as a college football player? And it's a worthwhile conversation, in Indianapolis for some of these teams that are looking to invest millions in these players and high draft picks. And when you draft players that don't produce, that's something that is going to get hung over your head a little bit as you go through your career, but also for the general manager, the scouts that picked you and invested in you. That's an important piece to the puzzle of, well, how are these guys doing from a evaluation standpoint? How are they doing from a team building standpoint? And that is something that when you look at production at the college level, it's very rare that you see college players that don't have the production at the college level, and then all of a sudden they turn into freak show type of producing Pro Bowl type of players in the NFL. And so that's worth watching as Clemson defensive lineman Peter Woods really has to answer for some of that, I think, in the NFL draft process this week. And when they do arrive in Indianapolis, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on Peter Woods and what he does this week on the NFL Combine side of things. And so it's a really fun week. I always enjoy it. We'd love to take the show on the road there one year. I will say it always kind of sneaks up on us. It is that last weekend of February, really, that it is usually slated for. And so we're right after the season. I'm just like, oh man, forgot to book that, kind of make our push to get there. But who knows? Maybe we'll be broadcasting live from there next year as so many ACC prospects each year go to the NFL Combine. And we'll jump into more of that later this week and look at some of those storylines as those things kind of come into focus this week in Indianapolis. A couple of, I would say, talking heads jumped into pure off-season conversation this past week or so, and Josh Pate always going to be one of our favorites when we listen to what he has to say. But he ended up having Mario Cristobal at number 9 as far as his coach that his top 10 coach rankings, and I want to push back a little bit on him. I think there is I don't think Josh Pate's biased. I think he likes who he likes and puts them up there. And he's pretty real in that regard. We all know that if you really watch his show and listen to what he's saying. But I will take issue with this. Mario Cristobal at number 10 or number 9 for him out of his top 10 coaches. Here's a list. I'll run through this quickly. Ryan Day, Ohio State, Kirby Smart, Georgia, Kurt Signetti, Indiana, Dan Lanning, Oregon, Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, Lane Kiffin, LSU, Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, Steve Sarkisian, Texas, Mario Cristobal, Miami, Mike Elko, Texas A&M. I don't want to say I'd blow up this line of top 10, and I don't want to spend an entire pod kind of reacting to this, but I think Mario Cristobal is a little low. I think for what we've seen out of him taking a program that did not have the alignment necessary, that did not have its priorities in order, and building it into a program that obviously reached the national championship this year. We saw him produce a Heisman Trophy winner last year. Certainly a lot of positivity around that program, even though it was disappointing what happened last year. But I think just at pure, I think at pure coaching jobs, I think he's got to be above Steve Sarkisian and Kalen DeBoer. And here's why. And I would argue Kalen DeBoer has a better argument for him to be higher than Mario Cristobal. But when you see the resources at Alabama and Texas, and you see how positioned they are, and what those two coaches were walking into from a pure resources perspective, you've got to keep that in mind. Mario Cristobal had to build it, and Miami has money. Miami's flexing its muscles in that regard now, but it was not aligned. It did not have its house in order. And I think just objectively, for me, Mario Cristobal, what he finally proved this year, the way they finished, check that box. And, they just ran into a team in Indiana that, was on a perfect season, on a generational type run. And they end up coming up a little bit short in the national championship game. But, Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, you could almost argue that they've underachieved with what they have. I would argue that with Kalen DeBoer for sure. Steve Sarkisian, I think there's been a little bit of that turnover across the roster, even though he's now entering year 6 or 7 in Austin. That the work to get it rolling in the right direction for Steve Sarkisian, as far as everything hitting on all cylinders, hasn't come together as well as maybe he would have envisioned over the course of his tenure. But they've punched through, and they made the college football playoff last year. Obviously, a disappointing result for them this year, not making the college football playoff. Kalen DeBoer gets a college football playoff win at Alabama this year, beating Oklahoma, and then things kind of settled back down in a sense when they fell. But he is very, very impressive in the regular season with just his consistency of winning. I think with Mario Cristobal and the coaching job that he's done, and kind of overcoming where Miami was when he got it, I think he's similar to Lane Kiffin, who's at number 6, where Lane took Ole Miss and a program that was dead to rights in a sense in this new era, and energized it. And they helped get the collective rolling, helped win big, helped be interesting. You look at the impact that Lane Kiffin had at Ole Miss. I mean, out of the top 10 coaches, no one outside of Curt Cignetti has had a bigger impact. And now he goes to LSU in a well-oiled machine and is going to have the resources. And Brian Kelly had a top 3 portal class, I believe, last year going into this season. So there's not as much building at LSU as one might be led to believe with a coach being fired. Mario Cristobal had to build this thing. And now his, I would argue, toughest coaching challenge of his career is this coming year. And what they do, they went out and got Darian Mensah, they got Cooper Barkate, they revamped their defense a little bit. And assuming some of those things hit, which I would argue his button pressing is pretty on par, we're going to see Mario Cristobal get more credit for what he's done. And I just think, Kalen DeBoer with Alabama fans, I mean, they got problems with him. I think they would have had problems with anybody that followed Nick Saban. But Steve Sarkisian, the offensive line being a train wreck, having to fire defensive coaching staff for what the resources at Texas are, I just don't necessarily think we're looking at somebody who is as good of a coach as we might think. I think he's a product of where his resources are, and he really needs to have a Mario Cristobal type of season this year when he punches through and gets them to a college football playoff again, but then goes on a run with Arch Manning. Like, you can't waste Arch Manning the way Texas's offense has, and that's Steve Sarkisian's baby. That's his side of the ball. So I don't really have a problem with the top 5. I really don't. I think you could argue Ryan Day took over a well-oiled machine and just really hasn't messed it up. And Ohio State is winning at an elite level. But I mean, you can't argue with the fact that he beat Texas. He went to the college football playoff again, and if not for Indiana this year, could very well have won the whole thing. But Kirby's Kirby, Curt Cignetti right there. Dan Lanning, I think you could argue that he maybe is too high, but the level of consistency that they've had is just awesome. And they're going to be in the college football playoff every year. So they're going to have a shot, at least what it seems like to me. Marcus Freeman, he's elevated Notre Dame. They've got to punch through, though, and win some big games that they're supposed to as well. So, and I say that as, they were in the national championship game against Ohio State. So you have a lot of skins on the wall as far as like Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman in that top 5, and Curt Cignetti now, and Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning, and how they've been able to win some games. But Mario Cristobal needs a little bit more credit for the run he just took them on, even if it means a little bit of recency bias, because Kalen DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian, I mean, they're under fire. That doesn't look like a pair of coaches that should be ranked above somebody who just took their team to a national championship and who has led Miami to a complete rebuild and successful one at that. So did want to react to that. Thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting list. I don't have too much of a problem with the top 5, like I said, but I thought Mario Cristobal was a little low, and lo and behold, Kalen DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian are in the SEC. So Miami's scheduled up too. So they've earned Mario Cristobal should have earned just a touch more respect there in that regard. Greg McElroy had an interesting point, and one that I don't necessarily share completely, because now Darian Mensah has proven to me that he could play at this level and did so at Duke. But he questioned whether Darian Mensah can take that next step at Miami and have the type of season that they need to have to be right back in the mix as a national championship contender. And here's what he said. He goes, "This is a big reset, right? What does Mensah really change?" Well, I think he changes Miami's offensive floor. Quarterbacks with experience and tremendous accuracy, they reduce some of the chaos for the offense. They get you right. They get you into the right play more often. They avoid those big turnovers, and they let your skilled talent kind of rise to the forefront. Can Mensah turn Miami into a team that can win those tight games because of their offense against high-level competition? We saw him do it with the run game in their postseason last year, but now if you got to throw it to win it, can you do it? Can Mensah deliver? I think this is a well thought out question and wonder with Miami's offense, because you look at what happened to Miami with the Louisville game and all those picks from Carson Beck. You look at what happened at SMU, where the offense didn't necessarily bring it either. If you have a dynamic playmaker, can you change your offense's ability to win big games, put them in position to capitalize on those moments, even when maybe the defense isn't playing its best? But here's Miami's 2026 schedule. They open at Stanford. They then face Florida A&M. They get at Wake Forest, against Central Michigan. Then they go at Clemson, host Florida State, Pitt. They host at North Carolina, at Notre Dame, versus Duke, which will be a fun one, versus Virginia Tech, and versus Boston College. And you look at those opponents and you can't help but think that, okay, if Wake Forest can play to the level that they did somehow defensively, that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be a first true tough test. Clemson, Florida State, they have athletes. Pitt lost a lot. North Carolina seems like they're kind of a toss-up as far as could they be improved, could they not? You get Notre Dame, which will be a stellar matchup in South Bend. That'll be the one where Darian Mensah has an opportunity to cement his legacy and cement whether or not he is that guy that can put them on his back. But I've seen Darian Mensah prove me wrong. I thought the jump to Duke, and in particular with Duke's, resources, I thought it was going to be really difficult. And so now you put him with an offense with all the weapons, and I got to imagine if Darian Mensah doesn't try to do it all himself, he could be a major difference maker that doesn't have those kind of moments of pure, like, just boringness and lack of production like we saw from Carson Beck at times, and just kind of the dink and dunk offense they had to go to. So lots of eyes on Darian Mensah, of course, and a really good schedule for him to really, I think, settle in fairly well and take the next step. So with that, guys, we are going to bring in our next guest, and really excited to have him back with us. And that is James Fletcher of On3. But before we do that, want to remind you guys about our friends at Sportsmo. Sportsmo is the app that helps you impact your favorite college football or basketball teams with money that goes directly to the student athletes. So download the app, make sure you get in on it for basketball season as it's still here, and help your favorite college basketball team win big with the Sportsmo app. That's sportsmo.org to download the app.
College basketball hits different with Sportsmo. You tap, they score. You pledge, they drop a three. You give as a group, they win as a team. At this point, you're not watching a game, you're in it. Download the app, fund your wallet, and get in the game. Download Sportsmo. Power the play.
And pleased now to be joined by On3 bracketologist James Fletcher. James, good to see you again on this Monday. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, great to talk to you. We had an awesome lineup of basketball. We learned what the selection committee thinks about quite a few teams, and now we get to hit update and see where the numbers land.
We'll get into the top 16 here very shortly, but let's start with Duke, Michigan, the game of the weekend in a weekend that had Arizona at Houston in another incredible basketball game. But Michigan against Duke, Duke comes out on top 68-63. Cam Boozer, once again, phenomenal. And the Blue Devils are able to now, I think, firmly say they're the number one team in the country, is my guess.
Yeah, I think they will come out as number one today in the AP poll. They were number one in the latest bracketology projections. And yeah, this is a Duke team that has just gotten up for the biggest matchups of the season. No question about it to this point. And Michigan was no different here. They got a great performance by Cam Boozer on the offensive end. They got enough production from the rest of the team on both ends of the floor to get it done and really withstand a really strong effort by some of Michigan's best players. But yeah, just overall a great day of college basketball. And that was really a nice cap for it. To see two teams that are potential national championship contenders go head to head in a non-conference matchup on a neutral floor in February really felt like a preview of how exciting March Madness is going to be come less than a month away now.
Duke just felt like the tougher team in this one. I don't think they trailed in the second half. They really stepped up their game when they needed to most, and made the winning plays. And I think that starts with Cam Boozer, another just incredible stat line for him, and being a player that I think Michigan could at least match up with from a physicality and size perspective. And he still just was able to make all the plays that he needed to get that win for Duke. And as we sit here and look back on it now, probably wrap up the National Player of the Year, it feels like, too.
He very well might. In the advanced analytics, he is just a monster. I mean, way far above everyone else in college basketball. We talk about win shares. We talk about box plus minus, player efficiency rating, all of those metrics that you can look at, net rating as well. He is just off the charts good, up there in the realm of the Zion Williamsons in the all-time rankings for those categories. So he has put together one of the best seasons, the best freshman years that we've seen at Duke and across college basketball in quite some time. It's going to be really interesting because the knock on him was, what'll he do against bigger, longer NBA level defenders? Well, you saw it in this game, 6 for 10, 18 points, 10 rebounds. The 7 assists, though, I thought was huge for him. To be able to distribute. Yes, you're going to sometimes be walled up. You're going to get stopped by these bigger defenders, the Yaxel Lindeborgs, Morez Johnsons, even Ade Mara when you meet him at the rim. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to get off a shot, but to find the open man as Duke's kind of key player was huge for this group as they pulled out the win.
And now we look at those top 16 seeds that the NCAA committee released. Of course, Michigan was number one. Duke number 2. If they were to do it all over again, of course, those would be flipped. What were some of your major takeaways from that top 16 group?
Yeah, I thought one of the big takeaways, obviously, coming into Saturday's slate was Iowa State being the final 1 seed in that group. Bracketology projections still had it as Houston, UConn, and then Iowa State. But any of those 3 you could have made a case for, and that's really what the selection committee kind of said on the show when they spoke about it with CBS, is that there was a clear tier right there for that final 1 seed spot. And so to see those teams, 2 of them, take losses on Saturday, that kind of default meant that UConn was going to slide up. But in terms of what it meant to have Iowa State there at number 4 coming into the day, I thought that the biggest takeaway was head-to-head is going to matter. Although in college basketball, that's not always the absolute defining metric that we're going to look at, it did play a role in putting Iowa State above Houston and then being able to separate them from UConn from that point. And so I think that is really important when we talk about Duke and Michigan at the top of the bracket now, entering the new week of basketball, because Michigan still has the metrics. The analytics will still tell you that Michigan is the better team. Now you get into more of the resume-based analytics, and Duke starts to make their case for that 1 seed, having all of their losses come, all two, in quad one. Michigan still has a quad two loss on their resume, but at the end of the day, a head-to-head matchup is going to matter. At least that's what they told us on Saturday.
And speaking of head-to-head, a good one in ACC play that really I think had a lot of impact was FSU beating Clemson. Not only beating Clemson, they beat them on the road.
Yep.
You know, the Seminoles going into Little John, and Clemson is in a free fall right now. They have now dropped to the 10 seed line in your latest bracketology that I saw. What is going on with the Tigers, and where is that consistency that they had? Where is that now?
It's a struggle to find it. And now on a losing streak, and it's not just the losing streak. Sure, you can excuse a loss against Duke, and I think we all did. We all kind of said, okay, they took a bad loss against Virginia Tech, but it's not the worst loss. Virginia Tech is on the bubble. Then they take a loss against Duke, and you think, okay, you can just write that one off. Everyone in the ACC is losing to Duke other than North Carolina to this point in the season. But then it was to drop a game against Wake Forest. Now there's real concern because Wake Forest is really a fringe bubble team, if that. They're really on the outside looking in at this point. And then to drop against Florida State, a team that's been closer to the bottom than the middle of this conference for most of the season so far, you've got real concern about the losing streak that is building for Clemson because they just can't figure out how to win games. Or really, a 5-point loss against Florida State at home, that's the closest result of these four. So things have really gone sideways, gone the wrong way on this team, and they're not going to get any help figuring it out because they've got Louisville and North Carolina up next on the schedule. They could really hurt themselves here. If they drop both games, they could end up on the wrong side of the bubble when bracketology updates in the next week.
This was another really good game, I thought, for the ACC at least. Miami at Virginia. Hurricanes almost pulled it out, 86-83. UVA gets it done. You sat here on this podcast last week and said, I have a lot of confidence in UVA. And Miami was, of course, on a heater as of late, and taking that tough stretch of ACC play and turning it into momentum for them in the tournament. Now a 9 seed in bracketology and sitting there in good shape. But a close loss on the road, not really going to hurt them. But UVA making a statement against one of the better teams in the ACC right now.
Yeah, I think there were two sides to this. On Virginia's side, you got kind of confirmation. Some people might have been scratching their heads. Some people probably, particularly people who follow the SEC closely, would have thought that maybe they could get another team in over Virginia. Maybe the Cavaliers would fall to the 5 seed line, but they really back up that they were added as a 4 seed in that top 16 reveal. They get the win against Miami and just continue to roll along. 24-3 at this point. I mean, that's one of the best records that we have in college basketball. And sure, they don't have the top of the resume wins that some of these others do, but the consistency, we talked about it last week. I'll keep talking about it. They are about as consistent as you're going to find in college basketball. And on the other side, you get a Miami team that, yes, takes a loss, but the overall record still looks okay, 21-6. Another team that doesn't have the top of the resume results that they would need to move up in bracketology, but I don't think they're at risk of landing on the wrong side of the bubble as long as they can take care of business down the stretch of this regular season against the non-NCAA tournament teams that they have left on their schedule.
SMU beats Boston College, takes care of business there, pulled away for a nice, comfortable win. This was coming off of the Louisville win that they had earlier last week, almost a week ago now. And they sit as an 8 seed going up against Auburn in the West region out of San Diego. The Mustangs, with that Louisville win, it feels like they locked themselves into the NCAA tournament as long as they don't have that kind of a meltdown and lose like the final 4 games of the regular season.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. You look at the rest of the schedule. Yes, you have a road trip to the West Coast to play Cal and Stanford. So that's not going to be easy. We've seen teams slip up out there earlier in this year, including North Carolina. So it can happen to the best teams in this conference. But I do have some confidence that them finishing this season, getting into the conference tournament, whether they pick up 1, maybe 2 wins in that, not only are they going to be safe, but they could continue to slide up this board slightly in bracketology. Not a ton of upward mobility, but they could easily make their way up into the 7 seed conversation if they can finish things out strong and get the wins that they need to here.
When we look at a team that is in a precarious situation right now. North Carolina, I think, is one that's really really interesting to watch because they do face and host Louisville on this Monday night, 6 p.m. on ESPN, in a big matchup. And Louisville coming off of a nice weekend where they win comfortably over Georgia Tech. North Carolina went up to Syracuse, took care of business up there. This is a major matchup for UNC from the standpoint of you're without Caleb Wilson in a sense. Could you end up getting him back here soon with the cast like we talked about? But then you're Virginia Tech, Clemson, Duke. You're in the NCAA tournament as a 6 seed. You're in good position. But just locking up kind of where you stand, it feels like this is the must get out of these next three. And then you throw the record books out against Duke.
Yeah, I think that North Carolina is in a really tough spot here without Caleb Wilson. They've been without Henry Visar here recently. So it's really stacking up against the Tar Heels. They got the win against Syracuse. I think that was a really big one for them because that's the kind of loss that sticks with you on Selection Sunday, that the selection committee is going to think about when they are evaluating your team against the rest. A loss against Louisville, I don't think you're going to get dinged too hard for it. Louisville already ahead of North Carolina on the overall seed line, also a 6 seed as we stand today. And so as we look at the selection committee and the way that they evaluate things, they can take injuries into account. They can look at this stretch of games and say, look, that was out of character for North Carolina. They didn't have Caleb Wilson. They were without, again, Henry Visar for a stretch of those games. Let's evaluate them on what they were able to do when they had these players at the level they will be for the NCAA tournament. And so that'll make when Caleb Wilson comes back with the cast important for us to evaluate as well, because that could be the situation that they find themselves in during the postseason. It could be him down one arm, trying to make an impact however he can.
Virginia Tech and Cal both get key wins just to kind of keep hanging around here. What'd you make of Virginia Tech? Obviously taking care of business against Wake, and then Cal getting a win at home against Stanford. That's an important rivalry game. But in both those cases, you're bolstering kind of the rest of the ACC, even though they're on the outside looking into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they do, because we've talked about some of these other teams that are in the NCAA tournament field right now as things stand. They still have these teams left on the schedule. Virginia Tech's going to play some of the top teams in the conference. So is Cal. And so while, yes, both teams are on the wrong side of the bubble right now, I think part one is that they both have opportunities ahead on the schedule to fix that, to flip things and get into the NCAA tournament field. There is a runway for them to pick up some of those resume defining wins that you're going to be able to point to on Selection Sunday when you compare yourself against these other bubble teams that are in the mix. But the other side of that coin is that you don't risk big falls for these teams that are almost, if not locked into the NCAA tournament as we stand. They're not going to take big falls down the board if they do lose those games, because Virginia Tech and Cal have both established themselves as at least bubble conversation teams.
Let's get to previewing the Monday-Tuesday slate with a couple games here. What do you see Louisville taking care of business against North Carolina? Do you see UNC with Henry Visar, who had 19 against Syracuse, kind of having an opportunity to maybe get that one? Or is this just going to be too much, Louisville without Caleb Wilson?
I think it's going to be really close to call here. We've seen Mikael Brown have some really big performances recently for Louisville. And so Louisville's definitely got the inside track here with the most talented player on the floor. But it is North Carolina at home. We know the kind of environment that crowd can bring. Henry Visar being back in the lineup is huge for this group, because without Caleb Wilson, having them both out of the front court was just completely debilitating to the offense. Having him back in there, I think that they've got some kind of anchor to rely on. So I'm not leaning either way really here. I think it could be as close to a pick'em as we could find in the ACC during this midweek slate.
And Tuesday is another duo of really, truly intriguing games. You got Duke at North Carolina. You got Wake Forest at Boston College. But really the main course is NC State at Virginia and Miami at Florida State. We've seen how dangerous Florida State is. We've seen how dangerous NC State could be. For both of these teams, Virginia and Miami, you're on full-blown alert here to make sure that you're ready to rock come 6 p.m. for NC State, Virginia, and 8 p.m. for Miami at Florida State on ACC Network.
Yeah, I want to kind of hone in on that Virginia NC State because, yeah, Will Wade's group they've found some things and then they seem to kind of try to pick up the pieces and find the consistency that they have. This is a huge opportunity, though. They can not only solidify their spot in the in-state tournament field, they can pick up one of those really important wins for the resume and build some major confidence heading into the final weeks of this season, heading into March. As we start to flip the calendar, we start to think about creating momentum. Sometimes it's not about being the best team over the course of the season. It's about getting hot at the right time. NC State fans will know that very well, having made a Final Four run in a year that they were a double-digit seed in recent history. So for Will Wade's team, I think it's about getting hot, and this could be the opportunity to really kind of announce their arrival if they can win this game on the road against a Virginia team that has just been the model of consistency to this point. We talk about this Miami-Florida State game, though, and it's really the ultimate trap game. On the road, Florida State, not going to do anything good for your resume if you're Miami. You're still the Hurricanes trying to lock yourself into the field here. It feels like they've got a little bit of cushion from the bubble now, but the metrics just aren't blow you out with Miami. They're still kind of lagging behind. The record is good, but they don't have great metrics, and that means that you can't afford bad losses on the resume when you're being evaluated against these other teams. So that's a really important for them to get up for, like you said, in that Tuesday slate.
James Fletcher, we appreciate all the time on this Monday. What a week we'll have too. Virginia, Duke on Saturday too. So lots of key games here down the stretch for the ACC as we'll continue to check in with you on Bracketology.
Thanks for having me.
There he goes, James Fletcher. Appreciate him as always for stopping by with us on any day of the week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, when we're streaming 8 to 9 a.m. Central, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern time here on All Access AM. Please make sure you are subscribed to our channel. You can scan the QR code now if you are watching on your computer. You can scan it with your phone, and it'll take you right to our All Access AM YouTube page. Just hit that subscribe button. It helps us grow the show. It helps us continue to grow with our ACC friends. It helps the algorithm. It helps all these things. So we appreciate all of you guys who continue to support us by hitting that subscribe button to All Access AM on YouTube. We do have some other things to get to on our football musings this morning as we kind of scattershot a little bit in the first half of the show and then hit basketball with James Fletcher. But we'll go to Virginia Tech. We'll drop a note on Miami as well in just a moment, but do want to remind you guys that we are presented by our friends at Corporate Magic. Corporate Magic is where you can get an incredible event done for you the way you see it, the way it needs to be executed for all of your clients, for all of your shareholders. Corporate Magic can put that together for you. They do have that experience on the big stage. And when you are looking for a partner, you better know that they know how to perform when the stakes are highest. And that's what Corporate Magic does. They do national sales meetings at a high level. They do incredible concerts, live events, streamed events, and productions that have been seen by millions and millions across the globe. So make sure you visit corporatemagic.com, see what they can do for you. Tell them All Access AM sent you, and they will bring their planning, design, and technology to keep your audiences fully engaged. So visit corporatemagic.com for more information. All right, we will end the show with a couple of musings. Like I said, let's hit on Miami really quickly here. Miami added some depth here at the cornerback position. Takai Aziz from Allen Hancock. It is a junior college in the California Community College League, and they add some depth here with a guy who recorded 51 tackles, 3 picks, and 2 tackles for loss for his Allen Hancock team. He will be coming in now as a player that brings a lot of length to this Miami defense, and one that I think we saw if we're looking for kind of a critical moment here is Miami's corner depth was certainly tested in the national championship, and they were able to go out and continue to add to that and kind of build up that depth with Takai Aziz coming into the mix here out of the junior college ranks. So that was something that hit my radar here earlier or to kind of close out the week and saw it over the weekend and things like that. So that is a nice addition. Again, 6'3", 185 pounds. He's got a couple of years of experience with his junior college rank. So Miami adds some depth there at the cornerback spot. Virginia Tech is one of the hot programs in the ACC right now under James Franklin with what he's been able to do with the transfer portal, addressing needs, putting them in position to be a team that is a stock up team. And Joel Klatt is among those that believes Virginia Tech is going to be a stock up team. And it's not a bold prediction, I think, to have that take. This is a team that brings in Ethan Grunkmeyer, who has familiarity with James Franklin in this offense. They have a solid, I think, enough defense with Brent Pry leading the charge there as defensive coordinator. And they added some key pieces on the offensive side that should make them intriguing. It should make them a stock up team for the ACC. I mean, I think from an offensive perspective, it couldn't necessarily have gotten worse. They added 27 players from the transfer portal this offseason. And with that type of a changeover, sometimes you can come out on the other side and say, okay, this is going to be a long, long rebuild. I think you could make the argument that Virginia Tech has an opportunity to start out really well this year, build buzz. Their bigger games are in the back half of their season, and they're going to have some key moments of adversity, I think, during that back half. And maybe of the early goings, maybe with all this change, the culture and all of those things, James Franklin's going to have a tall task, but he is leading this team in the right direction. I think, them being a stock up team is not a surprise by any means. And we'll continue to keep a close eye on how Virginia Tech does, because they continue to make noise in recruiting. They made a lot of noise with the early goings of their transfer portal haul, with Andy Frank leading the general manager side of things, and just having to get ready so quickly with official visits right off the bat, and bringing in those visitors without really knowing where they were, or some of the different turns around campus that they had not gotten familiar with just yet. So they were able to put it together very quickly. I think you've got to give them a lot of credit, and they will be one to watch as a stock up team. They're also getting an indoor practice facility. And James Franklin said this week or last week that the indoor practice facility needs heating. He's never been to an indoor that doesn't have heating. And, look, when I think, Virginia Tech is among those teams that when it gets cold, you got to have some heat moving in there. So it helps with the health and safety. They're spending a boatload of money to install that heated aspect to their indoor facility. They're doubling down on their resources for NIL and putting Virginia Tech in position to potentially have success in year one under James Franklin. So they're going to be really one to watch very, very closely here as this 2026 season approaches. And man, spring ball, you can't come up with, I think, in my opinion, a team that more eyes will be on in the ACC than how Virginia Tech looks in spring practices. So we're excited to keep our ear to the ground on what's going on at Virginia Tech. Let's close out a quick rapid fire here. NC State, we'll go back to this past weekend and run through the scores for you guys as we do on the ACC side of things and share where everything ended up. We talked Duke, Michigan. We talked Miami, Virginia, North Carolina, 77, Syracuse, 64, Louisville, 87, Georgia Tech, 70, Virginia Tech, 82, Wake Forest, 63. You had Florida State, 70, Clemson, 65, Notre Dame falling at Pitt, 73-68. SMU beat Boston College, 94-70. And Cal beat Stanford, 72-66. So we just wanted to run you down those scores. Currently, the standings of the ACC, we're getting a lot more clarity. Duke at the top, Virginia a game back, and then there's a separation of 2 games. Miami 3 games back, NC State 3 games back, Clemson 3.5, North Carolina 4, Louisville 4, SMU 5, and then you get into the middle of the pack and below. From there, we've got this week and next, and then we're into the ACC tournament. So we're really excited to bring you our coverage of that, the ACC tournament, and how things play out for March Madness. And look, guys, this is going to be a shorter episode, but I am hoping to be back to full go on Wednesday. I really appreciate James Fletcher for answering my questions so I can survive this episode. But take care of your allergies, take care of yourselves, and make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. We'll be back 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time on All Access AM. We'll be live. Feel free to jump in the chat. We appreciate AJ Crow for jumping in there early on in the show. And of course, our sponsors at Security National Bank, Corporate Magic, and Sportsmo. Make sure you got that Sportsmo app downloaded. You could literally support your favorite teams with donations and kind of bet the games in that sense. So a lot of fun to be had on the Sportsmo app. And we appreciate all of you guys, including Aviation, for jumping in there with the pony up right here as we're closing out. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and are enjoying the new time. We're seeing our numbers go up. So excited about that. And we will catch you Wednesday morning on All Access AM, 8 to 9 a.m. Central. Be here. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.